Does the name Matt Shea ring a bell? Anything? I'll wait. Still nothing? Well, it should, because he's a Washington state representative. Oh, and one more thing. He's also being accused of domestic terrorism. And you know what we do a really good job of? Talking about homelessness. You know what we do a really bad job of? Actually solving homelessness. Well, except her.
I tell my staff, I love Jesus, but I cuss a little. And it's really true.
And Oregon's got crabs. And because of climate change, they might be in big, big trouble. Here's the story.
All right, everybody, here we go. They say third time's a charm, and here we are at our third episode of The Story with Dan Haggerty. Am I underdressed? Now that I see myself out here, I feel It's too late. All right, we're just gonna do it. This is The Story with Dan Haggerty. It's new to KGW, but don't worry, you're still in the right place. Don't change the channel. Same important news, new package. Remember, we want to hear from you. Just use the hashtag HeyDan to let us know what you're thinking throughout this show. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places. We'll try to make you part of the story. All right, we want to get started now with a big update on Matt Shea. We just mentioned his name. You know who he is, right? Matt Shea, does that ring a bell? No, still not ringing a bell? How about now? Take a look at his picture again. Anything? Come on, please. Well, look. You should know who this guy is. First of all, he's a Washington state representative. Second of all, he's accused of domestic terrorism. Third of all, he's still got his job. Now, the Washington State House has been investigating him, and just this week they released all these documents to the public. We're talking emails and Facebook posts, all kind of evidence tying him to something that we followed pretty closely a couple of years ago, the Malheur occupation in eastern Oregon. Honestly, it is a little complicated. So how did we get here?
This goes back to 2014. The feds faced off against a bunch of armed ranchers over land use rights at the Bundy family ranch in Nevada. The Bundys wanted to let their cattle graze on public land, but didn't want to pay for it. Matt Shea came all the way down from Washington to support them and ended up forming the Coalition of Western States, or COWS, to support land rights issues. Shea stayed in touch with the Bundys after that standoff and reportedly met with them to plan that armed takeover of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in Burns, Oregon. Shea's emails to COWS members called it Operation Cold Reality that he signed, Resistance to Tyranny is Obedience to God. Then, in January 2016, the Bundys took over that refuge and stood off against the FBI. While that standoff was happening, Shea reportedly went to Burns to meet with the feds in order to pass their strategies on to the Bundys. That takes us to last month, when the Washington State House formally accused Shea of engaging in domestic terrorism. To this day, he still holds his seat, but he's been kicked off the Republican caucus, and both Governor Inslee and the top Republican in Olympia want him to resign. And that's how we got here.
Now, we will say that Shea doesn't really talk to the media. In fact, he's called journalists dirty, godless, hateful people. So he usually responds to stories about himself on his Facebook page, and he did that very thing last night, writing, quote, "The more the facts come out on this, the more it is clear this was a political hit job, label lynching paid for by U.S. taxpayers." He also says he's launching an independent review of the investigation. Let's get now to the big story for you tonight. And I think it's easy, too easy really, to start thinking about homelessness with broad strokes. Obviously, for a bunch of reasons, people can't afford housing and they're forced to live on the streets. In some cases, that reason is mental illness. In other cases, that reason is drugs. We already know that. But what I do think we don't do a great job of explaining is why once a person is homeless, sometimes it's very difficult for them to break that cycle. Something else I don't think we do a great job of doing is highlighting the people who actually are breaking that cycle. Pat Doris, thankfully, did a good job of showing us someone helping to do just that.
We've all seen the tents and shelters of the homeless on our streets.
Difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah.
Kathy Weiss saw them too.
Right. I think I was like most people. I was a little bit afraid of homeless people. Didn't know what to expect. Didn't know if it was all mental illness and drugs and alcohol. I just know that they're just like you and I. They're just people going through a really tough crisis in their life.
She'd find out soon enough.
This is my father's house, and we are a shelter for homeless families.
And over the years, build a program that moved 1,800 homeless families.
These are former residents.
Off those streets.
He moved clear to California. Then he
and
moved
into
back,
stable housing.
and he owns his own home.
Kathy grew up in the Dalles, in a Christian household where her mom showed her a passion for helping others.
She wanted me to have that love of people and that desire to serve. And so there you have it. I think that's probably maybe where the desire came to serve. I knew from a very young age that I was supposed to do that.
She moved to the big city to attend Portland Bible College and eventually landed at East Hill Church in Gresham as a children's pastor. Her Christian identity runs deep.
I tell my staff, I love Jesus, but I cuss a little. And it's really true.
In the late 1990s, she and a coworker felt called to create a shelter for homeless families and started knocking on doors to raise money. It went exactly nowhere.
And we would say, hey, this is what we want to do. We didn't have a name, we didn't have a dime. And they'd go, oh yeah, good luck with that.
But then a huge donation came in, $250,000 from a businessman who had sold his company.
And I looked at that and I thought, I'm so glad I'm sitting down because I would have fallen over. I just knew it. It was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it.
It allowed them to buy a duplex in the year 2000. Within the first week, 5 families moved in, and Kathy began creating rules and structures that would help rebuild lives. She also started planning her next move. It took 4 years, but she raised nearly $4 million and built the current My Father's House with cash, no loans, debt-free. Now she could help many more families.
Oh, it's so good to see you again.
Oh, you too.
Oh my goodness.
I love you so much, and thank
you
you so much for
Cynthia Moore lived here 3 years ago.
I love this room. This was for the families that was up here on this floor. And so we would
Cynthia lost her job, got evicted from her apartment, and ended up homeless. She arrived at My Father's House with her 7th grade daughter, desperate as anyone.
And this was my room, 307 Trust.
Each room has a word like that on the door. It's part of the shelter's attempt to change lives.
And everything they do is just, it's amazing.
All residents are required to get jobs.
We call it the Learning Center.
And attend classes here on topics ranging from self-improvement to smart money habits, cooking, spirituality, and more.
We do a lot of craft kind of projects.
I went in there and straightened all the videotapes and stuff. And
Residents must keep a curfew and stay clean and sober.
They have a chore list, and it's by room number.
There are daily chores and room inspections to make sure the rules are followed.
We don't tell people what to do, but we try to lead them into the thought process of what are your choices and what are the consequences of those choices.
Basic parenting,
It is basic parenting.
but a lot of people haven't had that.
Yeah.
It worked for Cynthia, who now has her own apartment in Vancouver.
so yes, I've been in my place now. It'll be 3 years. It'll be 3 years this coming November of this year. It'll be 3 years that I've been there.
Think you'll ever be on the street again?
No, because I've learned a lot.
Not everyone is so successful. About 25% do not make it and leave.
And I'm proud to call my family, every one of them, even the ones that don't make it, even the ones that leave here screaming, yelling that I'm horrible because they can't do their drugs here. It's okay. It's okay. It's not for everybody. This is one of our rooms of a family.
My Father's House holds 28 families, each with their own room.
How are you guys doing? You're settled in, and
It's free to
liking
the families.
class? Look at that precious baby.
The $600,000 yearly budget covered by donations and fundraising.
And we're very glad that you're part of our family.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
And I mean it.
The families can stay for 6 months. If they need more time, they can apply for apartments next door, which cost $500 a month.
We are very blessed.
And the families get to shop at a small store on site.
We write down kind of what they get. We have this done by room number.
Okay.
Oh, you make an appointment to come in shopping. It's all free in here. They get to shop twice a month. We have limits so that there's no hoarding going on. We don't want anyone to hoard.
Moving from the chaos of the street into My Father's place is a big deal for most.
This is room 202, and this is my home.
Daryl Peak slept in a car with his 9-year-old son last summer,
Yep, 9.5.
stunned at how far he had fallen.
Absolutely, yes. Man, how did I get here? How did I wind up here, especially with my kid? I was thinking, depression, anxiety, all the dangers of the streets, and I just got to get out of this situation.
He also found My Father's House.
I can't really put it into words, the feeling that I felt when my son really figured out that we wouldn't be sleeping in the car anymore.
Yeah, I'll bet you feel safe.
Yes, absolutely.
A punching bag stands in their room, a Christmas present from Santa, who visited the shelter, and a promise of a better future.
Feels good to hear.
Beside it stands a father who has a job and his dignity.
It feels good to say that I'm proud of myself and what I've been able to accomplish, even though it may not be much, but I'm taking the steps to get in a better position.
Just so you know, I really am a hugger.
It's all thanks to a woman with a heart for serving others.
Oh, isn't she sweet? For my life and for the last 20 years, this is what God's called me to do. I'm so glad.
A woman who got over her fear of the homeless and embraced them as people
Oh, God bless you guys.
and family.
I'm very, very, very excited to get to know you better.
Thank you. My kids will feel more relieved to be here too.
Yeah.
That was part of Pat's Those Who Serve series. We know there are so many people serving our community right now, and we would love to tell their stories here. So please use the hashtag #HeyDan. Tell us about them, or reach out to Pat or me on Facebook. We'd love to chat.
When the story continues.
Our hair is literally a crown that tells a story of struggle, triumph, pain, pride, and comfort.
They're tired of being told their hair should look more professional at work. Because let's be honest, I think we all know what that really means. Plus, you might not believe in climate change, but the baby crabs that are dissolving off the Oregon coast certainly do.
One more thing, I'm going to be on the story tomorrow with an inside Woodlawn I never thought we'd be telling. In case you don't know, I'm spending the year telling stories from Woodlawn Elementary School in Northeast Portland. So a student stopped coming to school. The school was told she was deported. We're there as kind of the fear and sadness ripple through the school. Watch it, stream it, set your DVR, use the hashtag #HeyDan, let us know what you think.
Hi, hello, this is me knocking on your door at an inopportune time, and it's because I have a list of census questions, and while they might have not shown up in your mailbox yet, they are available online, so we have a link for you if you want to check them out at kgw.com. Hop on there, leaf through them. They're not all that interesting, but you might like it. All right, caption time. Put your thinking hats on. I want to hear what you have to say. Take a look at this picture. It's a man very happy. He has a once-in-a-decade job. Unfortunately, looks like he got stationed in the middle of nowhere, standing in a flower field. This is from the Census Bureau. This is an advertisement. They want you to look at this and say, I want that job. I want to work for the census. And if you are one of those people, we got your back. We have some resources for you on kgw.com. I promise you, though, if you take the job, you won't get stationed, counting people in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, up in some town on the western coast. That's because, well, they've already counted those people. This is where they start every decade, in the middle of nowhere in Alaska this time of year, and they do it because it's not green like you see on the map. It's frozen solid, and they can use snowmobiles to go from person to person and count them up. Now, it's not all fun and games on snowmobiles all day. This is very serious business, especially when you think about the political world and the way they draw things up. It matters when it comes to congressional districts. Oregon, you know the growth you've seen here in the past decade or so. The more people you have, the more congressional districts you have, you get where I'm going here. Oregon has seen the kind of growth where we might actually have another congressional district, taking us from 5 to 6. What you're looking at now is the current map, where we stand right now. Now, state legislators would need to redraw this, and they have to make sure that it's equal population in every district. So it's not an easy task. This would be done in 2021 following the census if we have that type of population growth, and it would be ready for the 2022 midterms for people to run for those new spots. Now, the last time that we actually added a new district was a while ago, 1982. I was only one.
Yeah, the last time we had a dry day, there's only been one of them this month. It was back on January 20th, but things are drying out right now, so that looks good. You can see the rain is pushing on out. It has been a soaker of a day. You look at Doppler radar, we'll zoom out a little bit. There's rain to our south and east, but Hey Dan, we're getting some dry time right now, which is always nice to see. That's after another near ½ inch of rain in Portland. We'll just add that on to our January total, which has become rather impressive. We're now up to 7.32 inches for the month. To put that in perspective for you, we haven't had a January this wet since back in 2006, so it's been well over 10 years. That was a double-digit rainfall month. We haven't had any month this wet. Well, we had one of those more recently. That was February 2017, also over 10 inches of rain. So it's been a while since we've had a month as wet as this January. And as I mentioned, we've only had one day this month where there's been zero rainfall. We had 2 other days, just a trace of rain, but still it rained. So that's what we've been dealing with here in terms of the rainfall. The good news is it is going to dry out. And I do want to talk about snow a little bit too. We could end up with a skiff as we go into Tuesday morning ever so briefly before it turns back to rain. But we are going to see some really impressive snowfall totals up in the Cascades. So we're going to get back in the business of really good snow once we get into the weekend and the colder air begins to arrive. Overnight tonight, we'll get some fog forming now that the rain has ended. When we look at the 7-day forecast, the thing that really jumps out is Friday. 60 degrees. The rain lifts north. Really nice then. Then a dramatic cool down over the weekend with the snow levels dropping to about 500 feet by Sunday. Dan.
Sounds good, Matt. Thank you. Climate change is coming for your crab cakes. Listen, Oregon just isn't Oregon without Dungeness crab. And some researchers up in Seattle think that we could be in store for a bit of an identity crisis. Kaylee Chalmers is back with another story about how climate is changing and it can't be ignored.
In 2018 alone, the Dungeness crab industry pumped an estimated $75 million into Oregon's economy, which is why researchers are paying close attention to a new study that for the first time ever shows that acidic waters off the coasts of Oregon and Washington are damaging the shells of baby crabs.
Where you see that the shell is no longer intact, normal, and then, it's basically dissolving away.
Nina Bednarsik was the lead author of the NOAA-funded study.
On the individuals where we have found this extensive shell being dissolved away, we have also seen that those crabs were much smaller in comparison with the other intact crabs.
Scientists say the water is becoming more acidic for a couple reasons. Some of it is naturally occurring, however, some is man-made. You see, when carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels, some scientists estimate as much as a third of it gets absorbed by the ocean. Once dissolved, the CO2 combines with the water and forms something called carbonic acid. It's that acid that the researchers believe is dissolving the crab shells, as well as damaging important sensors the crabs need to feed.
It's definitely not good. I think this is a even greater reason for concern.
For years, scientists have studied how ocean acidification impacts other sea life. Last month, we tagged along with researchers as they studied the impact on oysters and how one Oregon hatchery now has to treat its water to keep its baby oysters alive.
Has the pH gotten any better? No. I think it's actually got a little worse.
As for what this new research means for the future Dungeness crab populations, the jury's still out. OSU ecologist George Waldbusser is doing a separate study on ocean acidification and Dungeness crabs. He says while this study is an important first step, there's a lot more research to do.
And there's all these other factors out in the wild, and so it's hard at the moment to say that ocean acidification is going to directly impact fishery yield, right? And that's what people are really concerned about.
Kaylee Chalmers with another important story for us there. She is on the environmental beat in Oregon and Washington. If there's something that you would ever want her to look into, you want us to, give you some more information on, hit us up on Twitter. Use the hashtag HeyDan or send us an email. Hey, just real quick, yesterday on The Story, we dug into the KGW vault for the 34th anniversary of the Challenger explosion. We found this story that KGW did way back in the day, just a day after that tragedy in the 80s. It was about a Beaverton teacher who wanted to be the teacher on the Challenger, but he was beaten out by Christina McCullough, the teacher who died in that explosion. Krista McCullough, rather. We also heard the reading of a letter written by a 7th grader at West Sylvan named Maya C. to Krista McCullough's husband the day after the explosion. It was a beautiful letter. And after the show, we started thinking and talking, and we were saying we would love to hear back from those people, either the Beaverton teacher or from Maya C. If you're out there, if you're still around, if this finds you somehow, get a hold of us, please. Use that hashtag HeyDan. Email us. Find me on Facebook. Send me a carrier pigeon. Anything. We would just love to catch up all these years later.
when the story continues.
We should have a choice to decide how we should wear our hair. It's not hurting us or anybody else.
Fighting for their right to wear their natural hair. The law in Washington already protects you from being discriminated against based on your race, your religion, or sexual orientation. But a new bill on the docket in Olympia would add something else to that list: hair. And that brings us now to our quote of the day from Rochelle Davis, who testified last night that she's been told at work to make her hair more professional. And she says, quote, "When people say it needs to be more professional, it needs to be more white." Obviously, she supports House Bill 2602. That bill would amend the current law in the books that bans discrimination based on race. It would change it to include hair texture and protective hairstyles. It cites examples like afros, braids, dreadlocks, and twists. One of the nearly dozen black women who testified was Jenna Hanchert. She used to be a news anchor at our sister station in Seattle, and she used to straighten her hair to go on TV. To explain why, she read an email she got one day from a viewer who, let's just say, doesn't seem like a very nice person.
And it said, quote, "Your hair needs attention. It takes up most of the frame and looks ridiculous. Personally, I don't think you should be on air. There are just too many of your kind on TV these days."
Nobody has signed up to testify in opposition. I want to say a quick congratulations to Keenan Lowe, who took a new job as the head football coach at West Lynn. If you're trying to remember exactly who we're talking about, who this guy is, he's the local hero that we have here in town. He risked his life to stop a student with a gun at Park Rose High School last year. This made national news. He was listed in Time Magazine's Heroes of 2019. Now, personally, I don't really know any of the parents or any of the students at Park Rose, but I'm sure there's some disappointment there. Aside from the obvious, he actually led them to their first ever playoff win in just 2 seasons. He's a pretty private guy from what I make of it. He didn't make a very big deal of all that hero stuff last year, but he did open up on Instagram about his love for his players and students at Park Rose. I just want to wish good luck to you, Keenan, and to his players from both schools and everyone else who he inspired to be better. Hey, we've been asking you to use the hashtag HeyDan to send us in some comments, ideas, feedback, that sort of thing. Well, somebody did one better. They sent us snail mail with some of the most specific feedback I've ever gotten. I'll show you when we finish the story next. So for the past couple days, we like to end the story by sharing some comments, things you've written in using the hashtag HeyDan, Twitter, Facebook, that sort of thing. But I had to share with you this old school attention getter we got. Attention newscasters. Someone sending it old school style with a little critique. There's no T in Alzheimer's. I won't forget it. I'm going to put this sticker, I'll wear it tomorrow night right here. So, keep using that hashtag Dan, but if you're so inclined, take your problems, put it on some sticker paper, and send it into this address you see right here. For now, that's the end of the story, but it's the very beginning of the news at 6:30.